I'm not a whinger, I'm not a whiner. I'm a very happy, jolly, positive person who's always looking forwards. But excuse me, if you will, I'm going to have a little whinge. So there are 26 House of Commons committees, 26 of them. And would you believe that the 5 members of Parliament elected for Reform UK, each of whom have 800,000 voters behind them, not one of us is on the 26 committees. No, we've been gotten rid of. And today, Lucy Powell, who is leader of the House, has set up a new committee, a new modernisation committee. When you hear that word, you should always have a slight shiver down the spine. And she herself, unusually, is going to chair this committee. It has 14 members, 9 of them are Labour. And I tell you what they're really going for. They're talking about second jobs, but in particular, what they're talking about is broadcasting. And it says the committee will consider what advantages, if any, outside paid engagements such as media appearances, journalism and speeches furnish to the public versus potential conflicts of interest. Well, folks, I want to tell you this. I don't see any conflict of interest between being an MP and coming here 3 evenings a week for an hour. And by the way, if there are crucial votes, I just won't be here.
Reform UK's exclusion from key parliamentary committees has raised concerns about fair representation given the party's significant vote share. These committees shape legislation and scrutinise government policies, and excluding Reform UK, while parties with similar votes, like the Liberal Democrats, maintain representation, questions the fairness of the process. The Labour-dominated committee overseeing MPs' media engagements adds to concerns about impartiality, as concentrated control can lead to accusations of bias. Reform UK argues this system undermines their influence, leaving them underrepresented despite significant voter support.
I will give way. I'll give way to both gentlemen.
Thanks the leader for giving way, but this, for me, seems a little bit unfair. We have a political party represented in this House that got over 4 million votes at the last election, and we will have no representation whatsoever on the committees, yet we've got a party that got 3.5 million votes that will have plenty of representation on the committees. Does the leader think that's fair?
Yeah. Well, as he knows, he has 4 members of this House, and the House is considered in terms of its members, not in terms of the popular vote, and that is a consequence of those formula which are long-standing and have brought about effective representation on many select committees.
Lee Anderson has been outspoken in his protests over Reform UK's exclusion from select parliamentary committees. He accuses Labour of using its dominance to sideline smaller parties like Reform UK, limiting proper scrutiny and stifling diverse voices in parliamentary procedures. Anderson's concerns center on political fairness and the suppression of opposition. Committees are typically formed based on party seat numbers, which often leave smaller parties, despite their voter base, excluded. This raises questions about the fairness of the selection process. Anderson argues that Labour's control over these committees limits the opposition's ability to effectively challenge government policies. This exclusion also fuels broader concerns about suppressing diverse political voices and undermining democratic processes, touching on larger debates about proportional representation, transparency, and good governance in Parliament.
I don't see any conflicts of interest whatsoever. In fact, I might make an argument that's slightly different. That I'm here with a panel of people. Some agree with me, some disagree with me. We have open debate. I'd like to think that through programs like this, what we actually do is take what's really happening in politics and bring it to a bigger audience. So I think it's complementary. So all I can say to Lucy Powell is this really affects Lee Anderson and myself. And if you're coming after us and think you can bully us, you've picked on the wrong people. I'm not going anywhere. If you want to martyr me, please have a go. So what about this conflict of interest, Trevor? I mean, I know it's we wouldn't have thought years ago that MPs would be doing broadcasting, but MPs have always written for newspapers, haven't they?
Absolutely, and this new modernisation committee has a slightly sinister Orwellian or Cromwellian tang to it. I think that there's going to be a lot more coming out of that modernisation committee, which we are ready for. And I think that the target for this is quite certainly the right of centre politicians. And where would they be pointing if David Lammy was still on LBC, for instance? And I think that it's not just right-wing politicians or people like yourselves who appear on GB News. I think it's GB News thereafter, as a voice which is an uncomfortable amplification of many people in this country's political point of views. And I think you actually summed it up there, that this is a more valuable way for people like yourselves, who get very little in the way of oxygen in the House of Commons, to get your point across on a more broader spectrum.
And yes, it's a channel that has an opinion, but Scarlett, we invite everyone to come on and say their piece.
Yeah,
don't
and
we?
I'm always in a tiny minority, right? Because I'm always...
50-50 is not bad, is it?
Why, Nigel, you disagree with me, Trevor disagrees with me. Come on. No, but actually,
we
no,
always
let's
treat
talk...
your argument with respect.
Reform UK MPs, such as Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson, have faced scrutiny for their roles as presenters on GB News, raising concerns about conflicts of interest. Their involvement in politically charged media platforms, especially when they interview political figures, blurs the line between public service and partisan commentary. Farage's reported earnings of nearly $700,000 a month intensify worries about divided loyalties. The Labour-dominated Modernisation Committee is investigating these paid media roles, aiming to restore public trust after recent political scandals. Jab News has also faced criticism from Ofcom for breaching impartiality rules, further fueling calls for stricter oversight of politicians in media roles.
So what should I do? What should I do with my company, which does a variety of things and pays money every month to 5 or 6 different people, depending on what services they provide for me to help me do all the different things that I do? Should I just get rid of them all?
No, I mean, somebody else can run your company, can't they? I mean, it happens over and over again, right? But I just think this thing about having to have, I've got to have this, and I've got to earn, what is it you earn, $1 million a year?
No, that's obvious.
Well, that's what you said.
Do you know?
I read it in the Register of Interest.
If you read the Register of Interest, you'll see my GB News earnings for August were, do you know how much?
Well, presumably almost nothing, because you weren't there, right?
I was there. It was 0. Anyway, we won't argue about that. There's a broader, more important point. Do we want our members of Parliament simply to be party lobby fodder? Is there not some advantage in them having a hand still in the real world?
No, I think what they should also be doing is spending a lot of time in their constituency and finding out, going out and about, right? Rather than, and of course you go on TV programmes. You always have done, frankly, Nigel, long before you were given one. That's why we've all heard of you. The BBC gave you your time.
There's lots of jealousy out there too, I think. There's a lot of jealousy in the Commons, I think. Why, if a Labour, let's just say for argument's sake, that a Labour MP is a general practitioner, might be quite a good thing for he or she one day a month.
Nigel Farage, responding to reports of his GB News income reaching nearly $700,000 a month, questioned whether he should keep his team or manage his business alone, given his media earnings. He advocates for MPs to focus on engaging with their constituencies rather than adhering strictly to party loyalty, emphasizing the importance of direct accountability and addressing local concerns. This approach highlights the value of grassroots level politics and challenges the traditional party-centered system, advocating for a closer connection between politicians and the electorate. Farage's combative tone, notably when he warned Powell and her allies that they had picked the wrong people, reinforces his anti-establishment stance. This rhetoric positions him and Lee Anderson as champions of free speech, standing against mainstream political norms. It's a strategic move to appeal to their supporter base, framing themselves as outsiders challenging the status quo. If the committee imposes new rules or restrictions on MPs holding paid media roles, it could have wide-reaching implications beyond Farage and Anderson. High-profile politicians like 𝑾𝒂𝒕𝒄𝒉, 𝒔 and 𝒆𝒄𝒉, who also have media roles, could be affected, setting a precedent that reshapes how MPs balance political duties with media engagements moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, I'm frankly astonished by what the Right Honourable just said about separating the process of reviewing the standards process from an individual case. That was a choice that the side opposite, the members opposite, made that choice yesterday to link the two. There is no separating them retrospectively. The Right Honourable gentleman has made much of the fact that his government doesn't want to do retrospective rule change, so I'm frankly astonished by him. And yes, Mr. Speaker, Labour will not be participating in this sham committee that the Tories voted through yesterday. Despite what the Right Honourable gentleman has just said, we will look with interest at his proposals, but we're not participating in a parallel process when my honourable friend, the chair of the Standards Committee behind me, is doing such a great job with his committee members, a cross-party committee with lay members. So I have to ask the Leader of the House, how's this other committee, how would it be resourced? Has there been a proposal to estimates process, considering that it will risk wasting taxpayers' money, something I know the Leader of the House dislikes intensely? If he can't get it past estimates, could he ask one of his honourable friends to contribute some of their lobbying money, or will he be paying the chair's salary? Now, as this side will not be participating in the sham committee, will the Leader of the House confirm? Would it sit with only Tory members? How would it be decided who sits on it, whether it's the one voted through yesterday or this other one that the Right Honourable gentleman mentions this morning?
𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒄𝒉, Shadow Leader of the House, condemned the government's overhaul of how MPs' behaviour is policed, calling the reforms a sham. She expressed skepticism over the Conservative-led committee's efforts, suggesting they are superficial rather than addressing core issues like bullying and misconduct in Parliament. Debonair's decision to have Labour boycott the committee highlights her frustration with the lack of substantive changes to accountability. Labour advocates for tougher measures to prevent MPs from abusing power and is positioning itself as a champion of stricter ethical standards and transparent governance. Her critique frames the Conservative government as unwilling to enact serious reform, reinforcing Labour's stance on cleaning up misconduct in politics.
I'm not a whinger, I'm not a whiner. I'm a very happy, jolly, positive person who's always looking forwards. But excuse me, if you will, I'm going to have a little whinge. So there are 26 House of Commons committees, 26 of them. And would you believe that the 5 members of Parliament elected for Reform UK, each of whom have 800,000 voters behind them, not one of us is on the 26 committees. No, we've been gotten rid of. And today, Lucy Powell.
In conclusion, this controversy highlights the complex intersection of media, politics, and ethics. The Parliamentary Committee's findings and actions could redefine the role of politicians in media, especially on platforms criticized for lacking impartiality. Farage's response suggests a contentious battle ahead with significant political implications for how MPs engage with media moving forward. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join the free Telegram group linked in the description, where we can talk freely and uncensored about important issues like this and support each other. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become a channel member for exclusive content. See you next time.